Spider-Man Noir is a fantastically cheesy character, but can his uncommon legend from the Spider-Man set carry a deck as the commander? With the ability to put +1/+1 counters on creatures that attack alone and deep surveillance, this legend is a great encapsulation of the comic version of the character and the Into the Spider-Verse version of the character voiced by none other than Nicolas Cage. So how do we brew around him? I take a strange pivot and look at mono black +1/+1 counters, and let's do it on an ultra tight $30 budget too. Let me explain. I've put together a budget $30 build your own precon I call Surveillance State, all about doing something a bit off-brand for black and leaning heavily into +1/+1 counters, as well as beefing up a single attacker. We want to be surveilling plenty of stuff into the graveyard, from creatures to spells, all to synergize with our effects and cheat some big beefy boys onto the battlefield. Before I dig into this brew, let me know in the comments how you've thought about approaching this commander and this Uncommon Legends deck. Our commander, Spider-Man Noir, isn't necessarily the beating heart of this deck. Get it? Beating? He'll likely be functioning more as an enchantment than a creature, leading to massive swings of surveilling by synergizing with creatures and effects that put more counters on creatures. And note that the ability does put a +1/+1 counter on creatures that attack alone, but doesn't specify that it triggers off of the power or number of +1/+1 counters on the attacking creature. It counts any counter on the creature. So what we can do is use creatures that have all kinds of counters on them, like 9 Lives Familiar, to swing on its own and get a +1/+1 counter, immediately surveilling 9 cards thanks to its revival counters. We want to set up the scenario where, as soon as our commander comes down, we're attacking with a creature absolutely laden with counters and setting up our library and graveyard. We could cast an X-mana creature like Endless One, Stonecoil Serpent, or the new Morlun on the turn before we cast our commander to ensure we can attack and get immediate value. Dropping a Nightshade Harvester early and letting counters pile up as opponents play lands or ramp leads to great opportunities to put pressure on one attack at a time. Playing a Bone Devourer after an early board wipe can let us have a big evasive flyer with multiple counters on it ready to attack when we cast our commander. An early Vashta Narada is perfect, as it survives all those board wipes and makes for a great solo attacker thanks to the fact that it can't usually be blocked due to having Shadow. Curve toppers like Westgate Regent, who gets bigger and bigger as he deals combat damage, is a great way to get 1 or 2 swings in before our commander hits the battlefield too. Perfect to set up for dropping Spider-Man Noir. And remember that this looks at all of the counters on a creature when it attacks alone, so a Horsey Revenant, surveilled into our graveyard, can put 3 more ability counters on a creature to dig us 3 cards deeper on attack. Bonus! That goes for ability counters from Call of the Death Dweller too. We're not going to be lacking for creatures in our yard to pull back. With a Death Touch and Menace counter on them for free, it makes a great new attacker hitting the battlefield. And that's just base level here. We want counters on stuff across the board. Essence Infusion, Maximum Overdrive, Unexpected Fangs, all ways to put counters on our creatures ahead of a beefy swing. But I'm a big fan of ways to get lots of counters on a single creature, like Grave Strength, which I keep wanting to call Gravy Strength in this script for some reason. Gravy. It mills and puts counters on a creature, which is a perfect overlap of synergy in this deck. But Asterian's Thirst is a good way to turn Spider-Man Noir into our best attacker. Exile the biggest badass on the board and make our commander the toughest thing in the yard. Everyone loves an underdog. We have some helpful enchantments here too, like Canonized in Blood, Sigil of Miracle, and the best of them all, Unspeakable Symbol, either getting you a steady stream of counters or a big burst of them in exchange for life. All fantastic for building up a strong single attacker. Let's not forget helpful equipment like Tarian's Soul Cleaver or Conformer Shuriken for getting extra counters on creatures. These can turn any little guy into a big beefy boy. Even a land like Spymaster's Vault can turn an opponent-on-opponent blowout into an opportunity to connive a ton of cards away and put a surprise bulk of counters on a creature we control. But then, here's the question in brewing. What do we look at as a secondary synergy dimension? Do we emphasize attacking solo? Do we rely on filling our graveyard? And how are we winning? In regards to attacking solo, I didn't want to lean too heavily into it. I could have included creatures with Exalted like Knight of Infamy, Duty-Bound Dead, and Nephirox, but I realized you only really want to be attacking solo once Spider-Man Noir comes down, and an additional +1/+1, not even a counter, doesn't really get us towards any kind of game plan, just bulks up a single attacker. But that's not to say that I don't have some elements that synergize along these lines, like Cathedral of War, Sigil of Valor, or Altar of the Goyf, but they're either zero opportunity cost or provide massive benefits to swinging solo. Definitely worth the slot in the deck. Thanks to the need to have a solo attacker, it allows us to be much more defensive and avoid counterattacks while we build up and set up. That's unusual for a black deck. We actually get to clog up the board and be more defensive before we're ready to move in for the kill. But our long-term game plan is more aligned with filling our graveyard. Descend and Surveil are playing hand in hand in this deck, either in massive bursts from our commander or small chunks on Dogged Detective, Doom Whisperer, or Umbral Caller Zealot. This gives us excellent card selection and draw fixing while dumping bodies into the graveyard. Unshakable Tail loves these smaller Surveil triggers as he'll be investigating each time we put a creature into the bin, allowing us for ongoing card draw via clues and more fodder to sacrifice for more surveilling. And our curved topper is Eye of Duskmantle, which turns all of our Surveil triggers into boluses, citadels, potentially, paying life for spells and chaining through our library and life total to overrun the board. Once our graveyard is filled, we can switch to bigger attackers and abandon our solo swings. Siegfried, Drakestown Forgotten, and Embodiment of Agonies all want to see lots of creatures in our graveyard and let us pivot to swinging big attackers at each of our opponents. Being able to reanimate specific creatures is much more efficient than casting them. I'd much rather stitch together Grim Captain's Locker or victimize an Eye of Duskmantle into play than paying 7 mana for it. With Living Death being the most expensive card in this $30 deck, it's well justified. We can put our entire library into the graveyard, then pull it all back into play while wiping our opponent's boards. And if we can't overrun the board or cheat big beaters into play, our game plan revolves around milling. Sir Conrad loves to see us put big swaths of creatures into the graveyard at a time. With 25 in the list, it can result in some good chunks of life loss. Upgrading the deck with an Eldrazi Titan for a reshuffle effect would make this even more effective as well, but we'll save that for the upgrade. Along these same lines, we have Polluted Cistern, which loves us milling 1 or a dozen cards at a time, pinging opponents for the card types milled. This could be hitting everyone for 6 extra damage each turn if you manage to hit the full suite of card types in our deck, just for 2 mana. Which, for an additional 5 mana, can also reanimate an extra creature. Bonus! And of course, a mono black deck can't resist having a Gary in the list either. If we're pissing away our life total on Unspeakable Symbol, we should have a way to reset it, right? The fact that we could cast, sacrifice, and reanimate Gary a few times goes a long way to winning as well. But what is a build your own precon without the pivot? And our in-the-box pivot commander is another hidden gem. It's Vadmir Newblood. A simple, small legend, he gets bigger and bigger as you commit crimes. Once he's got 4 counters on him, no matter how he gets them, he turns into an evasive, life-linking monster. And this is a perfect pivot into more counter-related tricks, with the benefit being that, as a vampire, Vadmir holds a Blade of the Bloodchief incredibly well for quick counters. We'd want to load up the deck with even more crime committing, beyond the loads of targeted removal we already have in the list, considering Vadmir gets counters when you commit crimes. The base list has Infernal Grasp, Lethal Scheme, and Pylon already, but we can expand that into Defile, Tragic Slip, and Go for the Throat for cheap, crime-committing options before we look into repeatable sources of crime committing like Tetzamok, Tao the Embrace, or Retribution of the Ancients, all letting us commit crimes on each player's turn for efficient counter gaining and a big, dangerous commander. We can also remove our graveyard synergies in favor of more crime, as Blood Hustler, Hervek the Punisher, and Raven of Fell Omens all want us to be committing crimes as well. This version of the deck becomes a much more control-heavy deck, synergizing with our same counter strategy and potentially leaning further into the solo attacker aspect of the brew. It's a fun option that won't set you back any more money, cost-wise at least, than the base list. But let's say that you do want to invest a bit more. Let's see how we can juice this precon up from the $30 it is right now in the upgrade. And here's where we may want to add in the aforementioned Eldrazi Titan. A reshuffle effect could be extremely valuable in a deck that's all about milling yourself. We don't want to take it too far, but we can definitely cut ourselves down to single-digit cards in our libraries. Sometimes you want to hit that reset button really bad. Swapping out one of our smaller guys like a Stalactite Stalker would be a good choice for a replacement. And as a monocolored deck, we really want Jet Medallion, the Darkness Crystal, and Nick those Shrine to Nicks. These go a long way to getting your 5-mana commander out in short order, but all set you back a big portion of this deck's entire budget. Moving an Everflowing Chalice and Mind Stone out of the deck would make a lot of sense in favor of these cards. And I wish I could put an Ozolith in this deck. It would be a great way to save those counters when your opponents inevitably get scared of your attackers, but it's worth almost twice as much as this entire deck is right now. Including it over Altar of the Goyf would be an ideal swap for some insurance. But I want you to let me know how you would brew for Spider-Man Noir. Were you expecting this take on the list? Let me know in the comments. And don't leave without checking out my sponsors like Card Conduit. They are hands down the easiest way to sell your individual Magic cards without the hassle of traditional buy listing. They'll get you top dollar while handling all of the heavy lifting, from sorting to grading to optimizing your price across a huge network of vendors. And they'll give you cold hard cash for it. You can use the promo code MECHANIC right now for 10% off of all fees. And if you want to pick up the cards for this list, make sure to go check out Card Trader. Use my promo code MECHANIC right now for 5% off your order from any TCG. Card Trader's zero system means you can get cards from all over the world with only one shipping fee. Save money and time today. Lastly, you can check out all of my decks on MOXFIELD. MOXFIELD is the best deck building platform in the world and makes it easy to build decks and search for specific cards with their powerful tools. Have you checked out their drag and drop feature yet? It's revolutionary. Be sure to check out my brews and follow my profile there right now. If you were inspired to brew today, you have to hit that subscribe button. Check out this other deck on my channel right now for more sweet tech. And as always folks, good luck and have fun.